Hi, Nanya.
Hi. Hi, is that Akshita?
Yes, are you happy to start sharing the slides while we're waiting for Sonali?
Sonali's just getting on. Yeah, I can share the slides. Just one moment. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our KCL session. Um, Delighted to meet you all. Sorry, I'm just getting the slides to load.
No worries. So yes, guys, I've just put into the chat. Feel free to put questions as we go along in the chat, and we'll answer them at the Q&A at the end. There's also a couple opportunities for you guys to have a go at answering some practice MMI questions, so that should be really helpful for you. So we'll be needing some volunteers later on.
Okay, so yep. So can everyone see my slides?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much.
Great. So and actually, though, we're ready to get started as well.
Yes, definitely. Go
Okay,
ahead.
brilliant. So hi everyone. Welcome to our KCL Med and My Prep and advice session. Amazing to see so many people here. I'm Ananya. I'm a second year at King's, and I actually did the session last year as well. So if you've watched the previous video, this is definitely like useful to build upon that. And we have Sonali here as well.
Hi everyone, I'm first year, so I watched the session last year and I found it really helpful. So thanks, Ananya. And obviously, certain things have changed since last year, so we're just going to give you like the most recent advice that we can.
So in this session, we're going to go over the course, so a bit about the teaching hospitals, and then the main portion, which will be your interview and advice with a Q&A at the end.
Okay, so we're going to talk about why the course. So this is how year one is split. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of self-study time for year one, and that decreases over the next years. And in the left corner, you can see how varied the timetable can be. So some days you might just have one lecture, and then some days it might be quite packed. So it's quite dynamic with how the timetable is. It's not a set timetable. And then in stage one, you have foundations of biochemistry, and then physiology of anatomy and systems, and then also introduction to values-based clinical practice. Yeah, so you get tested on FBS and PASS, and then the other section is mainly for OSCEs later on.
Yep, great. And then the rest is basically it gets more placement based as you go on. So actually, one big pro about King's is the anatomy learning. So the way we do it is full body dissections for most of the year, and then pro sections after. So dissections is when you get to do the cutting into the human cadaver, and pro sections is when they bring out something that's already been dissected for you to present and learn from. And that's done in your tutor groups every 2 weeks, and you can use the textbooks and also use that to explain. So it fits in really well with Kings's integrated curriculum, where we have a lot of lectures, a lot of tutorials, and then this to supplement the learning. So it's case-based learning with a lot of other ways to learn alongside. And yeah, KCL is home to the Gordon Museum, which is a big selling point for us actually. The largest medical museum in the UK, which is actually only open to medical students and medical professionals. So that's really cool. And yeah. So, Sonali.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the teaching hospitals. So Guy's and then King's College. They're obviously very old foundations, but they're also very innovative when it comes to research, and specialist care and services as well is quite a big thing. So King's College Hospital is very big for stroke and cardiac arrest specialist treatments, and Guy's and St Thomas. St Thomas has the Evelina Children's Hospital, which is very good for pediatrics. And they both have very busy A&Es as well. Because London, obviously being quite a populated city, it's quite nice to have that exposure as a medical student. So when you go on these placements, you get the best exposure you possibly can, and see a range of patients as well in their presentations.
Yeah, and in fact, the trauma centers are huge as well in combination with A&E. So it's really cool to be at the center of all of that. Next as well, so as a second year, I feel like I have a lot of reflections to spread knowledge upon. So first year is really a year of settling in. It's where we do most of our preclinical content, and so that's therefore students get to know a lot of medicine, like the foundations. It's also a year to explore. So London has hosted so many events and opportunities that first years such as Sonali have like so much opportunity to explore. As you saw with a lot of self-directed learning time. A great thing as well about King's is that because we're in London University, there's so many conferences and opportunities right on our doorstep due to our own free events and lectures, and also many collaborations with other organizations and other universities. So there's loads of university conferences. So even with the likes of other London medical schools, so that's really cool. And then also the world's oldest hospital journal, the GKT Gazette, which is Guy's King's St Thomas, is a magazine that's actually indexed in the British Library, and that's something that was started at King's a few hundred years ago. There's also opportunities to go abroad with certain students, groups and societies, whether that be sports teams or even medical societies. So that's something that really complements King's being a global hub for a lot of things. And yeah, world-class connections. So both inside and outside of medicine, there will be a GKT medic in that field. There will be a King's medic in that field. Whether that's sports or whether that's medicine, any field of medicine, there's really so much to explore here. And as we briefly mentioned before, the early placement at King's that starts from second year onwards, twice a week, means that it's really good to be able to gain confidence and clinical skills fast. And we also have a dedicated center for learning clinical skills. So really are well supported in every aspect of life here at King's, which is something we're really, really proud of and take a lot of advantage of.
These are some other reasons why you could apply to KCL in specific. So location-wise, I think all the accommodations are Zone 1, so they're very close to campus. I don't think any of them are over 30 minutes away from campus, even Battersea, which is the furthest away. And there's lots of opportunities, so societies and student-selected components and intercalation. So obviously in the first year, I've only done the societies so far, because student-selected components, I think is second year. So societies-wise, there's so many options that like you can always try something new. So for example, I did bouldering this year, which is not something I would have considered before. It's a very tight-knit community as well. So with your medic parents, I think that happens every year. And they offer a lot of support academics-wise as well. And obviously being a top 10 medical school in the UK is always a nice touch. And it's in your interview, it's always good to mention any research the university has done so that they know that you've done a lot of research into them, and that's why you want to apply. So one thing that KCL has been doing for quite a couple years actually, has been the Diabetes De-Stress Program for type 1 diabetes. So have a look at anything else that interests you, and maybe have a look into that as well, if that's what to pique your interest.
So a little summary of life in London, because if you talk about King's and just say it's in London, anyone applying to any other medical school in London can say the same thing. So specific to King's, we have the Shard, which is right on campus. We have Guy's Hospital, which is the tallest hospital in Europe. We have the Gordon Museum that we mentioned, London Bridge, which is a major landmark as well. And we also have Borough Market, which is nice, full of lots of like food and things like that. Local landmarks include as well the British Museum, National Gallery, Tate Modern, and parks, which are also quite free and accessible to visit and use. So that's really good.
Yeah, and when you're structuring your answers in your interview, always try and make it personal. So even if that means mentioning societies or any of your hobbies that you've had, then try and mention that too, because you want to make it as personal to you so that the interviewer obviously remembers that, okay, so-and-so said this, and I think that's why they would be the best student for our uni.
So I'm going to give you an outline of how the interviews run for King's this year. So this should give you some insight on how to start preparing. So it's an online MMI, meaning you will be allocated different stations, but it will be a virtual interview. And these are made up of 6 stations. So you'll have 2 minutes to read the question, 6 minutes to answer the question, which may include follow-ups as well, and 2 minutes marking time. And the way that that interview will also be set up is that you will have one academic or consultant level professional and one medical student. And it's really important to make sure that you address both of them. For example, if they ask if you have any questions, make sure you can ask the medical student how XYZ year of medical school they're in is going. So something to keep in mind, that you don't just focus on one person. It's just good etiquette, and also to remember that they're both marking you. And yeah, just to re-emphasize, it's MMI style questions. So just because it's virtual doesn't mean it won't be it's not a panel or anything like that. So it's MMI style questions with follow-ups. You have 6 minutes, and treat it more as a conversation rather than a Q&A, because you're getting to know them and they're getting to know you. Now, as for the scoring and the feedback, each interviewer, meaning both the academic and the medical student, they will score you out of 10, each for content and communication. So content is what you say, the facts, the figures, the reflections, and communication is how well your answer flows, the organization of your answer, the structure, how well you're signposting, for example, and the general flow. So think about how you can optimize to do really well on both, which is what Sonali is also about to give a few tips on.
Okay, situational judgment does tend to be quite a high yield for KCL. So when you are going through questions maybe that potentially might come up, that's always a good place to start off with preparation. Yeah, and define key terms when you start your answer, because sometimes the interviewer might not be aware of them as well. So you always want to try and explain things to them, not necessarily like in a lot of detail, but just give a brief overview of it. And the 2 minutes that you have before to read the question and just collect yourself and make sure that if the previous interview session didn't go well, then to clear your mind of that, especially because it's online and it's quite high pressure online, I found anyways, compared to in person, because you can't really see the body language of the interviewer. So yeah, just make sure that you're calm and collected before going into the station. And also use those 2 minutes to come up with a structure in your head. So come up with an introduction and then the points that you're going to talk about to help with the flow of your answer, and also to make sure that you stay on track with your points and then your answer. And that would help you with the conclusion as well. And whenever you can, try and link in the university. So for example, if they mention, stress in the question, then you can try and mention how the university helps you as a medical student deal with stress too, because that helps them know that you've researched the uni again in a lot of detail. And yeah, look at the camera when you're doing your interview, because it is online. So you want to make it seem like you're maintaining eye contact with them. But obviously in a laptop, the camera is all the way at the top. So you might need to direct your eyes towards the top rather than them being on the screen. So just be aware of that.
Brilliant. So we're gonna go on to our practice questions, and for that we'll also be taking volunteers, preferably 2 each for each question, and we'll also go through the feedback. So, sorry. It's not. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to do some practice questions. Now, if I could have 2 volunteers for each question. And now this first question, it's definitely based on the sort of personal qualities and motivations that Kings often like to ask students. So if I could have some hands up and Sonali or like someone help me choose because I'm only seeing the slides, so I can't really see what people are saying. Yeah. For this first question, if people could please volunteer.
I think if they raise their hand.
Any takers?
Okay, David, I think, has raised his hand.
Yep.
Should I just go?
Yep.
How long should I aim for my answer to be?
3 to 4 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, so a time that I faced a significant challenge was during my Duke of Edinburgh expedition, in which I was undertaking the expedition with a group of friends. And it was really difficult, to be honest, because there was a time where we had no idea where we were on the map. So we didn't know where we were. There was no landmarks that we could use to identify where we were. And I think the whole group was just genuinely feeling quite stressed out. They were a bit worried, and they were getting a bit agitated and angry too. And obviously, that was very understandable. I could very much empathize with that because we'd been walking for a long period of time. So, in response to this, what we decided to do was, instead of just walking mindlessly, walking aimlessly, we decided to just stop where we were, just have a look at our surroundings, have a look at our map, use the compass, and just take a step back and realize that it's not as stressful as it could be, that we can still figure this out and we shouldn't stress about it, and we should focus on getting to our destination, of course, as soon as possible. And in doing that, we did realize that there was actually a river nearby that we could follow, and we followed the river, in which we were able to find out where we were again on the map. And I think the way that we approached this as a group, especially with the idea of my idea to stop walking aimlessly, was really effective, because then we were able to compose ourselves, stay calm, and eventually get to the place that we wanted to be. And I think just this skill of not giving up and persevering in times where it might seem difficult is really important in a career in medicine. Especially as medicine, there's going to be times where you're facing difficult scenarios, and there'll be times in medicine where facing scenarios that you might be unfamiliar with. And as a medical student, for example, at King's, let's say there's something you don't understand, there's always times where you can communicate with other people, ask them for help, but also look what you can do as well to approach the situation differently, and you can overcome that challenge. I know King's College has a lot of support available throughout the medical school if you're ever facing any challenges, whether it be academic or whether it be to do with mental health or anything like that too. So King's is very well for that. And then also, and the aspect of a doctor, when you're a doctor, there's often going to be times that you might not know how to approach the scenario. And I think it's important to understand the scope of what you can undertake and the scope of what you can do. If you're not competent to do a situation, you should never compromise patient safety to prove that you can do it or anything like that. So asking other people for help, whether it be a senior or another colleague, is also very important too. But also just persevering through the situation as well, and not giving up, and of course abandoning the patient. That's something that should never be done. But in general, I think overcoming challenges and persevering without giving up is really important in medicine.
Great, thank you. Thank you, David, for volunteering yourself as well on this webinar. Now, thank you for your answer. We're going to give you joint feedback with the next person who volunteers, just so that we can do an all-together, summary of this question. So if there's anyone else that would like to volunteer to answer this question, you don't have to get it perfect. That's what this webinar is for as well, so completely fine. Don't be scared.
Yeah, Evelyn? Oh.
Yep, Evelyn.
Yep, should I just start?
Yep.
Okay, so I think a time where I faced a significant challenge was when I was a CAFOD youth leader for my school, and I was part of a team which had to organize a game stall for my school's fundraising event for the charity CAFOD.
During this time, a challenge that arose was that we saw that our store wasn't getting that much attention compared to some of the other stores. And this was quite a significant challenge for us as we were there to try and raise money for charity. And we were seeing that it was demotivating the team and that we were struggling to get people to our store. To tackle this scenario, as the leader of the team, I had to figure out a way to address this while also addressing the morale of our team. In order to do this, I tried to delegate tasks. So I realized that our store was much more popular with the younger students compared to some of the older students. So I delegated some tasks to some of our team members. So, for example, I got a couple of team members to go and try to find some of these younger students and to advertise our store to them, make it seem more attractive. And also, I tried to get some new people on our team to and make some new games that might appeal to some of the older years. And in this way, I think we're able to definitely increase the traffic or the foot traffic at our store. And in this way, we were able to bring more attention to it and overall raise more money. In the end, we were able to increase the morale of our team whilst also performing our individual roles, whilst also raising above £100 by our store alone. To reflect off of this, I think being able to understand that challenges are going to come your way and to be able to identify the problem that's arising and to be able to identify solutions for them is really important to make sure that you're not demotivated and that you figure out the solutions collaboratively as a team and to be able to motivate your team in that way so that you can overcome this challenge as it's going to come about so many times during your time as a medical student or as a doctor. So, for example, facing troubles with, say, things outside of medicine, such as, say, your work life balance, or even as a doctor, facing challenges about patient care, sometimes with challenging scenarios, with not being able to give care that will actually, or not being able to provide solutions for potentially a patient who might be terminal, for example. So I think that being able to identify these challenges and to be able to do the best that you can with these, I think that's really important. And to be able to maintain your own mindset and remain optimistic is really important in the future. And it's something that I want to continue on into my long term, to be able to preempt these kind of problems and try to identify them quicker and to remain organized in this way.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you, David, for both volunteering. Very brave as well, but very useful. So, this question, both of you, you did really well. It's definitely setting you up for success in the interview, especially taking opportunities to volunteer. Main thing I'd say though is that you both spoke a little fast, which is fine for this, but it's okay to slow down. You do have the 6 minutes. And with regards to follow-ups, I just want to say, don't be make sure you do speak to time, but if you don't manage to answer their follow-up, it's not necessarily always a bad sign. So don't feel panicky about that. And further to that, follow-ups, if you're wondering what kind of follow-ups Kings like to ask, it's either going to be one of two things. It's either going to be based on what you've said, because they're trying to get more information out of you, or it's going to be a pre-planned follow-up question. Now, follow-ups aren't always guaranteed, but they're quite common with King's interviews, given that you have 6 minutes to talk. And for this question, both of you did really well, especially with the links back to medicine and your future career aspirations. So that was really, really well done. And I could see that you had a sort of a structure and your examples were very specific. So well done for that. We're going to go into some more specific feedback so that everyone can see the sort of detailed breakdown of how we would approach this in a real interview. But when you see this for 2 minutes, think about all aspects of the question and think about how you could address this using examples. So there's two main ways I would advise going about this. So either use the STAR method, which is very popular, but make sure that when you're using the STAR method, you don't come off as too rehearsed or too robotic. These structures are just a guide. And with everyone preparing with these, you want to also make it about you, as Sonali said before. So also make sure you use STAR, but you link back to medicine, or you link back to the university you're going to be studying at, or you link back to work experience that you've observed these things on. So make it more linked and make it more specific and more relevant to you. So with that, you can use the intrigue, hook, teach, and link format as well. So intrigue, so you describe the specific challenge. Hook, you explain the goal or responsibility. So what was the task, the burden that you, not burden, but the task, the main pressure point in that situation. And then you outline what you did to address this issue. So what were the specific actions you took to manage that situation? And then teach, what did you learn from this? Whether that be skills, increased emotional awareness about yourself, things like that. Link, so highlight a positive outcome and what you will do next time. So with that as well, for example, like achieving goals and gaining better time management skills, making to-do lists, but make it specific to you. Don't just give generic responses because they'll be able to see right through that. Give responses that you think would genuinely work for you or have been useful to you in the past. It makes it so much easier as well to answer the question when you're not having to think too much and you're able to draw from your own experience. So yeah, reflecting on the experience, make sure to have a strong reflection. A good method to follow if you're struggling with this is like if what, so what, then what, because it makes your reflection really developed. And also mention how it shaped your personal growth or improved your coping strategies. Now, with the link to medicine, some ideas could include coping with emotional strain, such as losing a patient or handling a difficult conversation. This links as well to, emotional fatigue, compassion fatigue, things like that, but that doctors face on a day-to-day. Maintaining performance during long hours and high-pressure situations. And then at the end of this, you want to summarize. So summarize means not repeat the entire question, answer again, but to mention your main points. Because not to be cliche, but these interviewers will be sitting through like multiple interviews in a day. So you want to make sure you communicate to them and make it clear to them your main ideas, so that you've made all your key points. And you might even use say something extra to really link everything you said together. That's a really smart thing to do. And yeah, follow-up questions to these could ask, challenges in the NHS or qualities that you had to acquire to cope with this significant challenge. So just think about that as well. Now I'm going to pass on to Sonali to take the next question.
Okay, so this one's slightly longer than the last one. So if you need a bit more time to think about it before volunteering, then that's okay. Okay. Chinosmo? I'm so sorry if I didn't say your name correctly.
That's fine. Chinomso.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm a medical student on a ward round, and a junior doctor is making a mistake. He's prescribing medication without reviewing. Okay. As a medical student, it's not my place to, let's say, go tell the patient the doctor's made a mistake. That'd be a very bad thing to do, since it would undermine the patient-doctor relationship. However, I would make sure to point that out to the junior doctor respectfully. I wouldn't try to make it as if I'm catching them out, making a mistake, but instead I'd try to respectfully help them, or just point something out and say, I'm not sure about that, and try and come across as respectful to the junior doctor. If the junior doctor were, let's say, to become aggressive, because it could happen, I'm much more junior to them, and it might make them feel uncomfortable to see someone more junior than them pointing out a mistake, I would then try and find a more senior doctor to help us get through this. And okay. Sorry, could I have a bit of time to think?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'd also make sure I do this conversation in a place that's private so other patients don't hear, especially to make sure that confidential information isn't shared with people who don't need to hear it. To make sure that patient confidentiality is kept, and that, of course, as I talked about before, the patient-doctor relationship isn't undermined.
Okay. Is that your answer then?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would also like to volunteer for this question? Again, if you need more time to read through the question and then volunteer, that's okay. Obviously, we'd love to see some volunteers too. Okay. N? No.
What I would do is. Sorry, could you put the question back on the screen?
I'm going to just work on it. Okay, would you be able to see the question at the top? It isn't.
Sorry, guys, it's being a bit temperamental soon because I have the PowerPoint, but it's. So, Sonali, could you repeat the question?
Okay, 1 second.
Really sorry, guys. I don't know why Zoom's doing this.
Okay, maybe if you unshare your screen and then reshare it, but I can read the question out in the meantime. So you are a junior doctor on clinical placement. During ward rounds, you notice that a fellow junior doctor is repeatedly prescribing medication without reviewing patient notes or checking for allergies. What would you do in this situation? If you need me to repeat the question again, I'm happy to.
That's okay. So this is a difficult scenario to be put in, and I think it's important to acknowledge that both you and the junior doctor are going to have to face this perhaps awkward conversation, and regardless, I would have to do it because of my duty as a doctor, following the GMC rules when you see something happening. And firstly, I would take the doctor to a private area, for example, the staff room in the hospital, and I would ask them whether there's anything wrong, for example, if they're okay, as it could be that something traumatic has led them to forget to review patient notes or check for allergies, or that they're in a rush to go somewhere. And after checking that they're okay and trying to get them to open up, I would then ask them that perhaps I've noticed that they haven't been reviewing patient notes or checking for allergies, and do they agree? And then if they agree, then you'd follow up from that and say perhaps why are you doing this, and making sure that I'm using a non-accusatory and non-offensive tone to make sure that this is a judgment-free area, that they should admit it themselves. And of course, if they don't admit it, I would have to escalate to a consultant or to a registrar or somebody senior who can deal with this better than me, because of my duty as a doctor, following the medical pillars of beneficence and non-maleficence. I have to maximize the amount of good that can be done, as well as making sure that harm isn't done to the patients, because this could be potentially fatal or have detrimental effects. And lastly, I would tell the doctor before I escalate them, by telling them that unfortunately I would encourage them to admit it first and report themselves first. But if they don't, this incident does have to be logged in the system to prevent this happening in the future. And so I would then tell the doctor that unfortunately I will have to escalate this to somebody and they can then deal with it.
Yeah, so both of those answers are really good. You both mentioned like the main points that you would come across for this question. If we could go to the next slide, also talk about this as well, actually.
It never goes onto the slide that we wanted to. Really sorry, guys.
Okay, I can start talking about it, don't worry. So I'm sure you guys have heard of the SPIKES framework, or sometimes it's called SPIES. But yeah, so you'd start off by asking them to move onto a private setting, and then introducing the idea very slowly, because you don't want to be blaming them or anything like that. And yeah, so if you follow the SPIKE structure, it helps with the flow of what steps you're going to carry out, and you need to try and present that in a chronological order so that the interviewer is following along with what steps you would take as a medical student, and that you're aware of why you would need to take those steps as well. So with your answer, after every step that you say you will take, if you try and explain why those steps are important, that would also highlight to the interviewer that you're aware of what the GMC guidelines are, for example, and what your role as a medical student would be. So, for example, seeking information, that would be you trying to gauge if the junior doctor hasn't been checking notes, or if they have been maybe like in a different environment to where you actually are, so you haven't seen them checking notes, but they have been whenever you've not been around. And you'd also need to see if patient safety is a risk, which obviously if there are things like allergies and they haven't been checking the notes, patient safety would be a very big factor that you would need to consider. Because as a medical student or as a doctor, patient safety would be the most important thing that you would look into. And with escalating the issue, you'd always need to inform the junior doctor that I will need to speak to a supervisor or someone more senior, so they can help handle this situation and ensure that patient safety is maintained at the highest regard. But it links back into like patient confidentiality. You would still need to tell the junior doctor, even if they're being maybe violent or aggressive. You would try and communicate that just so that they're aware, and it prevents the situation from escalating even further if they're not aware. Yeah, and then support that you could provide the junior doctor, or you could provide maybe patients that have undergone like deterioration of their conditions due to the doctor not checking their notes, for example. And you'd link that into how it's important to do this as a healthcare professional and the importance of duty of candor as well. So you'd encourage the junior doctor to come forward if they haven't been checking notes first. That would be your main thing that you would tell the junior doctor if you do become aware that they haven't been checking the notes. And then you would mention, I might have to take this up to a senior. And yeah, the point of you being less senior than them, or being a medical student versus being a junior doctor, they've obviously spent more time on wards than you have. That's quite a good point to mention too. But yeah, whenever it comes to any role play situation, try and link in the GMC guidelines and things like that too, because as a medical student, you're practicing the GMC guidelines, and the GMC guidelines apply slightly differently when you're a medical student too, so that's always a good point to mention. I think that Ananya is going to rejoin. So are there any questions that anyone has about any of the two questions that we went through recently? No?
I think David has asked about the duty of candor.
Oh, okay, so would you like me to explain that? Just because I can't see the chat.
Yes, perfect. So David's just asked, could you link it to the duty of candor so the doctor has to tell the patient what he did?
Hi guys, I'm back. I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened over there.
That's okay. We have some questions that people have asked.
Okay, that's fine.
So we can go through that. Yeah, I would say link duty of candor, but make sure that you don't come across as that they don't know what the duty of candor is, because you're not trying to undermine their role and what their knowledge is as well. So yeah, it's obviously a difficult situation to try and explain, but you would take very cautious steps into like easing it into the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Happy to take some questions as well now that I'm back. Sorry about the technical difficulty over there.
So someone else has asked for the last question, how would you link it to the GMC?
Oh, so now you may as well take that.
Okay, so the last question is in question 2, I'm assuming, so the one that I went through. I'd say if you can't link it into the rest of your question, like the introduction and then the middle bit, always try and link it into the conclusion. So you can say, from the GMC guidelines, I'm aware that there's something called the duty of candor, and it would be important in this role because I would try and remind the junior doctor that they do have to follow the duty of candor and be as open and honest about any mistakes that they've done, or if they're struggling with taking notes or checking the notes regularly, for example, because it could be that they're quite stressed with other things external to work, which means that they might forget. Yeah, and as a medical student, you would also need to follow the duty of candor and be honest about what you have seen. If the junior doctor didn't admit to anything or tell you that, no, actually I have been checking them, but I've been checking them in, say, the MDT room, like where the multidisciplinary team meetings happen, instead of actually on the wards. Are there any other questions?
Is there anything that we can clear up as well that you might have been
Yeah.
confused about from the slides, just in case we went too fast on anything? I mean, so in terms of the hot topic conversations, the questions as well, that tend to be a bit more niche. Things that can sort of come up is stuff to make, like, to give you an idea, is stuff to do with digital technology. For example, between medical professionals and patients. So for those kinds of questions, because I realize we haven't given you guys much advice on that, it's quite easy. Like, a lot of people get stuck on those. I know me and Sonali were discussing how in our own interviews we found it a bit tricky to navigate those. So to give you guys an idea of how to answer those questions, think about what the question is asking you and why. You have 2 minutes to do that. And then think about the context of the question, you know, which hot topic or which NHS area can you link it to? So that will give you a really good foundation as to how to approach the question. Then start thinking about the stakeholders in that situation. So most likely it will be doctors amongst other healthcare professionals, of course. You will have patients and you'll have the system as a whole. So patients as in the general population, and then the system as a whole, for example, NHS. And then going from that, you can maybe think about short-term significance and long-term significance. That way, no matter what kind of question, niche question comes up, if you have this in your head during the 2 minutes that you're given, you'll be able to smash it every single time. And of course, make sure to give a summary at the end. Hopefully, that quick little whistle-stop tour give you an idea of, you know, how to approach those kinds of questions if they do come up, and you won't be as confused as we were.
Yeah, I would add on to that and say that with these questions, or like as any SJT or role play style question, start off with an introduction that pretty much summarizes what points you're going to go through, and then go through those points, but make sure that at the end you at least have linked in the GMC. I'm just going to highlight that because the GMC does link into a lot of things, like with healthcare.
Okay, yeah. So for people asking in the chat, do we know when the final KCL interviews are sent out and their offers sent? To be honest with you, Kings don't really specify that information. What I can tell you is that they tend to, the standard policy is that they need to give decisions by the UCAS deadline. I know that might sound annoying, but myself, I only received my decision in April. That's after doing my interview in March. Sonali might have a different answer for that, but London universities in general tends to take time just because there's so many applicants. So I'm sorry we can't give you a concrete answer on that.
Yeah, I
Hot
think.
Oh yeah, Kara.
I think someone asked, can the interviewers put the questions in the chat? You can ask the interviewers to repeat the question as many times as you need. So, for example, if your Wi-Fi cuts or if their Wi-Fi cuts and you can't hear the question that well, do ask them to repeat the question as many times as possible, just so that you know what the question is. And yeah, linking back onto what Ananya said, they are quite random with it, I would say, like when they give out offers and things like that. So for me, I think, yeah, my interview was in Jan, and then I got an offer in, I think, early March. Can't quite remember though.
Yeah, hot topic questions, open-ended or specific. I wouldn't say either of them. I'd say they're just broad. So the scope of the question, the hot topic style questions, they more or less don't necessarily have a right answer. It's like you bring in what you think is relevant and your justification, rather than asking, specific pros and cons for something. It will be more they can ask pros and cons, but it'll be more your analysis rather than you giving a fact about of something. And will you get access to the slides? I'm pretty sure this is going to be uploaded onto YouTube, and you're free to screenshot information from there, as well as note down anything we're talking about right now. I'd advise actually for you guys to note down stuff from right now. This is key for CP. Okay. Do they do pictures, like analyzing them? As it's an MMI, I just want to preface that everyone in the King's interview, right? There's going to be more than 1,000 people applying and interviewing for the King's interview. So they're not going to give everyone the exact same interview. Therefore, we can't confirm, that what kind of question everyone's going to get every single time. So I'd say definitely prepare for that. And in the same vein, prepare for article analysis, graph analysis, data interpretation, tables, things like that, just in case, you get thrown thrown at you. EMDP interview is definitely the same as the normal course. How many batches? Can't tell you. Sorry, no one knows about Kings themselves. Even if you ask for freedom of information, they won't be able to. Latest interview, I personally had mine in Marchish time, but I think that might change year to year. That's also something that they don't confirm. Really sorry about that. Yeah, so Akshita, I had a lot of people in the same position as Akshita with the interview in December and offer in April. So, for me, it was interview in March, offer in April. So, difference between digital and analog NHS, you don't really need to know analog per se. It's more digital as in tech. So, to give you a quick breakdown, digital products are more like your AI, your telemedicine, virtual wards, things like that. So yeah. And sorry, Sonali, I'm kind of speaking over you. I'm just doing a quick fire of everything. So KCL known to ask any curveball questions. See, this is what I meant by the hot topic questions. They won't be, again, we can't predict the questions for you, but KCL are known to ask sort of not straightforward questions. So they'll ask a bunch of straightforward questions and maybe one or two will be a bit random. But I feel that's the case with any interview you might do. There will always be a few unexpected questions because they know that everyone's been preparing. So why would they repeat what's readily available, So if you use the tip from today, though, especially the ones that we were giving with the top tips, the outline, and what I said about hot topics, and everything else that Sonali's been saying, you should be fine with a bit of extra hard work as well. Roleplay, haven't really heard about, but SJT, we said, is especially high yield. And content communication, that evenly scored.
think you've answered all the questions. I think most of them.
Everyone's repeating the same question about writing the question down. Sonali, were you able to do that? Write the question down? I know you can write notes, but I'm not sure about writing the question down.
So in my instance, my Wi-Fi didn't. It was like some audio issue, so I couldn't really hear the question. That's why I mentioned before about asking them to repeat the question if you can't fully hear it. And I wrote the question down then because I could hear obviously certain words and not certain other words. I think you can write down the question. Again, I think someone said that their tutor said that you can put it in the chat. I don't think I had a chat option in my interview. But obviously, if you do have a chat option, you could ask them. The worst they're going to do is say no. They're not going to really call you out for it or anything like that. But I think I'm not too sure what you can really use the pen and paper for, apart from writing down like stuff that you come across in, I don't know, graphs and things like that. And then obviously, if you do want to write the question down, then do, but just be aware not to constantly look down at your piece of paper to remind yourself what the question is. You do need to try and maintain eye contact with your laptop or your iPad, whatever device you're using, so that it looks like you're actively listening and actively talking to the interviewer.
Sonali, can you please handle the interview score, because your interview is 6 stations, so you'll have a better idea.
I'm not sure how the interview was scored and what kind of system that they used for that, but I'm assuming that they...
Did you see in your feedback? Because I got feedback for mine, and they gave 10 out of 10 for communication content, so...
No, they didn't give us any feedback or any information after.
Okay, so in terms of the total of the interview score, that's will change depending on their scoring system. But if you can think of 10 out of 10 for content and communication as the standard that they used for years, we haven't been told if that's changed yet, and then apply it to the stations, you should be able to come up with a safe estimate. Some safe questions to ask if they ask if we have any questions. That's a really good question, funnily enough. So when they ask you, oh, do you have any questions for me? I'd encourage asking a question, because it shows your enthusiasm and curiosity about the university that you should be, that you want to go to. Don't ask anything that's readily available on the internet. For example, the admissions page. If you ask, what do we study in first year? That's not going to be a great look on you, because they would expect you to know that. But things you can ask are, if they told you what specialty they're in or something, you can ask something about that. You can ask them, oh, what's your favorite place to go for food around campus? Oh, what's some interesting, what's the most exciting thing you've done in London so far? What do you think is special about King's or working at King's in your opinion? If there's a medical student and they're in, year 3, you can ask them, oh, how's year 3 going? What's your favorite thing, about King so far? Things like that make general conversation, because they want to see if you're someone who's teachable. They don't want people who are just thinking about medicine their entire time. So if you're nice and friendly and chatty, they will be really receptive to that. And it also helps you learn more about the university from their perspective. So win-win.
I think Anushka asked, do they check what you wrote down at the end, like on the piece of paper? No, they don't. They don't ask to see that piece of paper. They won't check like what you've written down if you've written down the question. Yeah. But obviously, be careful of how you dispose of that piece of paper if you do write the questions down, because King's are very big on the NDA that you signed before the interview.
Just to reiterate, it's been asked a bunch of times, is the interview of medicine A100 same as that of the foundation year? So it's not a foundation year, it's called EMDP, the Extended Medical Program, which is different to a foundation year. And yes, it is meant to be the same. So your preparation for either of them should be completely the same. You can follow our advice. The example questions to ask, this will all be on a recording, so you can go look that up as well. Preparing for hot topic questions. I said a bit about that before, but in terms of preparing instead of in the interview itself, my personal advice is if you're reading, so for Kings, I don't necessarily think it's about recitation of facts for hot topics. It's more about your understanding of questions of the topics to give your own analysis and judgment. And so, therefore, if you're reading an article, say for example on a hot topic, note down 3 statistics and then note down some pros and cons or some opinions you have about the thing. Note that down in a notebook, and then you basically have a bank of knowledge to draw from. And also, in your 2 minutes planning time, you can think then about the context of the question and pull from your knowledge that you've revised. I hope that helps. If you're still confused, feel free to ask questions through my UCAT, and we all try our best to get back to those. I don't know if Sonali has anything to add.
Having a quick look at the chat. Oh, with the piece of paper again, you don't need to say at the start of your interview that you're using a piece of paper. They will assume so. If they've said you can use a piece of paper and pen, they will assume that almost every candidate is using them. And anyone that has interviews soon as well, good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Okay, so do you have to ask a question at the end? You don't have to. They normally offer you to ask a question. You wouldn't normally start that yourself. But it's best to ask one, because otherwise you have some awkward silence at the end, and it's an opportunity to show off your enthusiasm. So why not? And it doesn't have to be something super detailed or elaborate or deep. It can really be as simple as, oh, how is working at King's going? Or, what do you enjoy doing around here? Really, small talk, really. Personal statement doesn't tend to be asked, really. Like, they don't bring that along necessarily. No, so it's 2 minutes before is your reading time, 6 minutes generally to talk, and then 2 minutes for them to mark. Yeah, so that's also on the slide. Hopefully when you get that from the recording, it'll be a lot clearer to all of you. Sonali, would you want to give some advice on using the pen and paper, just because we never got that 2 minutes?
Okay. In the 2 minutes, I personally didn't use them, but I think it depends on, like, if you prefer collecting all your thoughts that you have on a visual thing, or if you just like thinking about it, because I'm someone that likes to think about my points before instead of writing about it, because I do write slowly, that's why. But if you find it useful to write down your points, and follow out a structure, then yes, I would recommend doing that. Just, again, be aware of not constantly looking down at your piece of paper and trying to maintain eye contact. So if you do write your points down on a piece of paper, try and still remember them, so that you don't shift your head quite often, because you don't want them to accidentally misinterpret it and think that you're looking at another source, for example, during your interview. Yeah. The ideal dress up for the interview, it would be just smart casual.
What you wear for sixth form?
Yeah. Oh, some sixth forms are different though.
Oh, never mind.
I would say, I think I wore a nice, shirt, a button-up shirt, but I didn't wear a blazer, I don't think. Okay, it's not the final 2 minutes, I think. It's the 2 minutes that you have before each, station where you answer. So that's just 2 minutes of reading time and thinking time. And obviously, a very short break in between each station so that you can clear your mind from the previous. So again, because it's MMI, just be aware that if the previous station didn't go as you expected, just forget about it and deal with the next station and deal with everything part by part, not look at it.
Okay, so right, as the meeting is ending, we've got an onslaught of questions here. So with the camera, do I need to move my hands around to be expressive? It would be nice, because you obviously don't get the advantage of in-person body language. They won't think you're using another source. You can just, how I'm doing it now. Guys don't think I'm writing something down, right? So that's your answer. and what time, until what time will the interviews be running and the percentage of offers given? Okay, so interviews run till approximately mid-March, latest early April, but that's normally when they start sending final decisions out. So that's how it's gone for previous years. Can't confirm for this year, of course. And then the percentage of offers given relative to those that, okay, so offers to interview ratio, that's all available on the MyUCAT website with the strategic application document. That has been updated with the latest information, so you can check that out in depth, all the stats you need. I just don't want to butcher them right now.
And I think another question is, do they mark your interview in front of you, or is it in the break? I would say it's both. It depends on the interviewer. If they prefer hearing your whole answer and then marking you, or if they prefer hearing your answer and marking you at the same time. But yeah, like they might use the break to maybe mark the previous students, but whilst you're reading the question, but I don't think it's
Days in advance, I think 7 to 14 days. For me, it was 14 days, and for Sonali Zero, it was 14 days. But they've not confirmed whether they've updated that for this year. But it is in a relatively short time frame.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they give you a time and a date, so you don't get to book it on a system or anything. If you don't know a topic they talk about, do they gatekeep the information? So they gatekeeping is probably not the right term. If you really are unsure about something and you don't know the context of it, like at least have a go, but don't lie about knowing about something, because they will be able to see through you. Definitely ask if you feel unsure about something. They'll probably give you a bit of a hint, and then you can go from there. Yeah. Did they say how KCL was marked? We did mention that in the PowerPoint.
This will be on YouTube though, so you can have a look at that.
Notifications on your laptops. If you can try muting your notifications. Laptop speaker or AirPods, whichever one has better speaker quality. Only you will know that. You can maybe test it with a family member and see how the call quality is. Personal statement. So they don't specify whether they use personal statement. Personally, neither of us had personal statement questions, so I'd say a tentative no. Sonali, tips for data interpretation?
Yeah, so the way you want to start data interpretation off is, if it's a graph, for example, you want to state what the title is and what the x and y axes are and what the ranges are as well. So, for example, if the y-axis doesn't start at 0 and has like the little squiggly line, you want to mention that it has that, so it could be misleading, for example. So they don't want you just to point out what the positives of the graph are. If there are any negatives that you can think of, so it doesn't have a source, it doesn't have a title, for example, mention that and say that it could be misleading. And you want to try and explain the graph as if, or whatever data you get, as if the interviewer can't see it. So state every little trend that you can see, and if there's any oscillations in the data or spikes, things like that.
Yeah. How many hot topic stations? That's not necessarily called hot topics, it's more broader context of medicine. And number of stations, kind of 1. And then why do they ask why KCL? So in recent years, they haven't tended to ask it, but I wouldn't say that they don't ask it, because we don't truly know what's going on in people's interviews due to the NDAs. We can only speak from our experience. Good answer for this. We've given lots of reasons on the slides, and I've also mentioned the structure for this in the top tips, which is, talk about how it developed you as a doctor professionally and personally, then go into the course as a priority, and university and the city. Main point being, make it specific to you. If you're talking about society, talk about why you'd be interested in it. If you're talking about dissection, talk about why this is actually useful for your learning specifically. Don't give a fact file, because they know this information. They want to know why you care.
Okay, based off of the advantage of their learning style as well, for me, because I'm first year, so my experiences are slightly different to Ananya's. But with the lectures on anatomy and physiology that we'll have a dissection within 2 weeks about those lectures.
We have
so it helps you see. Okay, it helps you see like new structures or how structures are integrated together in the body as well. Does that make sense? Okay, hopefully that makes sense.
You can't read from previously written notes. That's kind of a form of cheating. That's not advised because as well they're not testing you on your recitation of knowledge, right? They're really trying to get to know you and get to know your reasoning and your aptitude for someone that they want to teach.
With the nursing at King's, I think that I'm not sure about the museum, but nurses definitely do learn about anatomy.
Yeah, they definitely learn about anatomy. Dissections and stuff we're sort of unclear on, but I will say that nursing, like all healthcare students on Guy's campus, which is the medical campus, they do have access to the Clinical Learning Centre, Shepherd's House. So and also we do have this thing called IPE, which is interdisciplinary professional education or interprofessional education. So lots of like students from across the healthcare courses, they have sessions together, case-based learning discussions together, so to apply their knowledge and see their different roles in the group, which I think is actually really cool and sort of unique to King's. So we forgot to mention that before, but yeah. And useful to have the hospitals so close to KCL. Yes, but those are not the only hospitals. We also have ones that are further afield, which makes sure that we get a diversity of experiences across, different experiences. For example, in further out hospitals, in district general hospitals, which serve underserved and rural populations, which are less busy. We have GP practices that we get to spend our time in second year. And then we also have the Central London hospitals, which are KCH, Guy's and St. Thomas, those ones which are a lot more fast-paced and have make up some of the major trauma centres.
With the stations that we had, unfortunately, we can't see that because of the NDA.
And they also varied from person to person, so
yeah,
we can't. It wouldn't help you. Main station topic, personally struggled with. I guess by this point we would have prepared quite a lot for interviews. So advice to have more preparation on. I would just say prepare well, as in be reflective, think out loud if you're unsure, and I would say advise you as well to reflect on your own strengths and weaknesses and see what topic you'd like to work more on, because I think that answer really differs between person to person.
The way that I kept track with my content and answers when I was practicing is I had a Notion page, and then I'd have the toggle list. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that or use that even, but I split it into the different categories, so hot topics and then personality style questions and things like that.
Advice to give myself during med interviews. Okay, so Sonali and I both got all 4 of our med interview offers, and I'd say the biggest thing is to not stress too much before and after, because it's really important to be able to reflect on what went well and what didn't go so well in your past interview and use that as motivation to carry on. Don't feel too defeated, because I think I did let one station or one question get me down a bit too much. So definitely keep a positive mindset, and also go in with the mindset of this is not a Q&A. This is not some big performance. This is a conversation with your potential future professors. You'll come off a lot more naturally, and also just go in with you've got nothing to lose, leave it all on the table and try your best. But if there's anything specific Sonali wants to say, go for it.
No, I completely agree with that. I think I used to get very nervous in between my stations and the waiting time, which is why I wouldn't write anything down on a piece of paper, because I just needed the time to collect myself in between each of the stations and move on if the previous station didn't go well, for example. Yeah, I think that the best advice I could have given myself, when I was doing interviews, is to focus on the structure and the flow of what my answer is going to be. So always try and give a conclusion of what you've said. That's what I did, and I think that helped the interviewer follow along, and it definitely helped me stay on track with my like points, so I wouldn't get confused and lose my flow.
I'd also say address all parts of the question. I said it on the main body of the PowerPoint, but genuinely it does go far, because especially if you see a question based on a topic you've already done or practiced on before, it's really easy to start blurting out what you've revised or practiced for a different question. But what you need to remember is that you're answering the question in front of you, not the slightly different version that you prepared. So that way you're addressing the question directly. It seems like such simple feedback, but you won't, like, there's so many people who mess up on that, and so I definitely advise you to stay focused on that, especially when you have 2 minutes to read the question. How many stations would you say you got? Honestly, I think it's the same. A lot of people do this, right? When you sit an exam or you do an interview and you think you did really badly, but that's because of the pressure and the stress, and then you come out and you did reasonably well. So I don't think any of us could say we smashed that entire interview and etc. etc. There will always be a level of I'm not sure how I did, and I hope for the best. So I wouldn't use that as a measure of how well you did.
Yeah, I agree with Ananya.
Yeah. And my level of I think I did well might be different to you. Like you might think you were messed up if you did the same thing. So it's different.
Also, the interviewers expect you to be nervous. Like this is something. Interviews aren't really something that everyone's used to. It's quite like a very first time thing, especially when it comes to university interviews. So don't worry about coming across as very nervous or like too nervous, because they will expect it.
I think that might be all we can. Yeah, okay. I think people are starting to leave. Akshita, if there's anything we should add. Or you think is pertinent for us to answer? Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining. Do make sure to check out the recording when it goes up on YouTube, and we really hope you found this useful.
Thank you, and good luck to anyone that has interviews soon.
Yeah, good luck. Huge good luck.
If you, even if you haven't received one.
Thank you so much, Ananya and Sonali, for the session today. I think it was super, super useful, and it covered so many important topics. So yes, the recording will be on YouTube. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon at the remainder of the events this week for both medicine and dentistry. So thank you so much everyone for coming.
Good luck everyone. Bye-bye.
Good luck.